How do I feel about the potential future of CRISPR babies? I don't know, right? Okay, I guess here's where I'd go with it. There are things that can happen in conception and development that no one wants to happen, right? For example, Tay-Sachs. Tay-Sachs is a disease that kills you by the time you're 4 at the latest. It is a disease that we don't know how to stop, where you have a healthy, beautiful baby, and then that baby slowly dies for a few years and never, ever makes it out, right? Now, I think that almost anyone would not want that experience. I don't think anyone, and the 4 years that you have are painful and confusing, and you don't really have control of your body, right? And usually it's only 2. 4 is quite a long time to live with Tay-Sachs. So when you're looking at that as an example, right? It's very easy for us to say, that shouldn't happen. We can remove the possibility of that happening, and that would be a good thing. But then, at the same time, right? Where do we draw the line? You do worry about neurodiversity getting wiped out. Yeah, this is the thing. Disability is a slippery thing to define, right? Because the answer really is, the definition of disability, as best as I can define it, is just like, what are we not willing to accommodate? So let's think about this for a second. The average human is somewhere around like 5'8", probably, right? So we build things for approximately people who are 5'8". But if we built things all for exactly people who were 5'8", and no one who was over 5'10" could use anything, and no one who was under 5'6" could use anything, we'd be like, we did a pretty bad job of that. We should build things better, right? In that world, everyone who isn't within that narrow margin of height is disabled. They can't use anything. They can't do anything. Nothing works for them, right? At that point, right, we have created disability. As a society, we have decided that we are going to disable those people, right? They can't use our public infrastructure because they're too tall, right? So that's not how it works. We have made a decision instead that we're gonna accommodate as many people as we can in terms of height. But there is a cost associated with this at a certain point. And where we draw that line on that cost is who we decide should be disabled, right? We've decided that people should be able to use infrastructure, but if you are, I don't know, 6'8", you're gonna start having a hard time using infrastructure, right? We have decided an arbitrary line for every given use case where we've decided people should be disabled. And just like with height, this works for anything, right? So there are people who can walk as much as they want. They can walk forever. They're so good at it. Their legs work great, right? And those people are definitely able-bodied. Let's call those people our 5'8" people. But then we have people who can mostly walk. Let's think about like someone in their maybe late 70s. So they can walk, but they're moving a little bit slow. And if they have to walk too much, it becomes a little bit painful. And this is where you see accommodations like in airports and places where you have to walk long distances. They have those people movers so that you can just stand there and be conveyed. It makes you do less walking overall, right? And that can be much more comfortable. And then you have people who have various kinds of disabilities that make it so that they can walk, but it's comfortable if they stop frequently. And for these people, right, you might see a lot of chairs in public, right? And then you might see people who use a wheelchair usually, but can get up and walk if they have to. And those people, they might be able to access a building with no ramp or anything, but it's probably going to be pretty unpleasant and a little bit difficult. They might choose not to because of that. The same way that a very, very tall person might choose not to ride in a particular car because it would be very painful, right? And then you have people who must use their wheelchairs, right? They don't have an option. Their wheelchair is how they get around. That's how they move themselves through the world. And then, if there's no ramp, I mean, unless they're like mega buff in their arms and they can do those like crazy sick tricks to get upstairs, probably that place is just inaccessible to them, right? Yeah, exactly. Making some infrastructure accommodate tall people might also make it not accommodate short people. And so this is a lot of what engineering is about, I think, right? Figuring out how to make things accommodate people without using a ton of resources and in ways that, you know, you may not have mobility issues, but it's, by God, it's more convenient to have a machine move you. Yeah, I mean, that's also, right? Comfort and convenient also matter. Yeah, ergonomics is a fascinating and beautiful field. And it also goes hand in hand with accessibility, right? We have this idea that there are people who are disabled and people who are not disabled, but we've just presented a spectrum, and where you draw the line for what you consider disabled is really just a question of where the engineers who designed that place drew the line. What do we have the resources to accommodate? What can we think of a way to accommodate, right? It's why a societal collapse would basically kill everyone with any reliance at all, even on glasses or mild chronic pain. You're so dumb. You're literally so stupid. How do you tie your shoes in the morning? I've never met a stupider person. Brother, before there were genetically modern humans, we find people with shattered legs. Oh my god. Humans have taken care of each other, have accommodated each other's disabilities, and have taken care of each other for longer than there have been Homo sapiens, right? We're looking at other varieties of Homo, right? Homo neanderthalis, right? We find evidence of them caring for each other with injuries that would make it impossible for them to care for themselves. Like, I actually cannot conceive of being that dumb, of thinking that, like, if society broke down, we would just leave old people in a ditch to die. Like, God, you're stupid. No. If we didn't have governments like we have, we would still take care of each other because we would still have families and communities. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a freak. So, people who have glasses, if they didn't have their glasses, they would not see as well, but they would still be able to do a ton of things. I'm deaf in one ear, and it just does not get in my way that much. I have a disability that is relatively slight, but does have real consequences. For example, I can't always hear when cars are coming and such things, and I have several times in my life had my friends grab me and pull me out of the way of something because I didn't realize that someone was trying to get by me in the best case scenario and there was a car coming in the worst case scenario, right? People take care of each other. They accommodate each other's disabilities, and again, disability is something that we decide to do. Differences in ability, which isn't like, that's not like the more politically correct way to say that, it just describes a different thing, right? Differences in ability are what each person is capable of, right? Someone may be able to sprint really fast. It's me. I'm really fast. I run really fast. I can run really fast. If you can only run for a bit without getting winded, no one would call that disabled, but obviously we have differences in ability, right? Yeah, societal collapse, however you choose to define it, wouldn't even get rid of the government and infrastructure entirely. Yes, it would just localize it significantly more. Thank you. Sadbo fan, you are so smart for that. You are so real for that. In fact, you know, a lot of revolutionary action throughout history has dealt with forcing infrastructure to become local by making it impossible at a larger scale, right?